This is Canberra, Australia's capital city. Do you ever stop to consider what was here before this modern city came into being?
To be honest, I always thought Australia's capital city is Sydney.
Well, not only that, people often joke that Canberra has little heritage. Well, for a start, we're gearing up for the centenary of the city in 2013. And just because Canberra was planned and didn't evolve naturally like most cities, doesn't mean we can't feel a connection to the region's pre-capital history. So I thought I'd delve a little and found plenty to shout about. There's the environment and pre-European history. And who better to talk about that than passionate ACT Parks manager Brett McNamara. I caught up with descendants of the first people, Arnold and Alinta Williams, who expressed their pride in this country. Historian Alan Moore got me going on bushranger John Tennant, Canberra's first European resident. We even set off to find his undiscovered booty on the mountain that bears his name. Crinigan's hut was built over 160 years ago and is situated in otherwise modern Amaroo. I even met a real Crinigan. I went to Tumut on the 105th anniversary of that town being voted the future federal capital to hear local views on how that might have turned out. But the decision was made to put the capital here. I caught up with historian and keen hiker Matthew Higgins to talk about the location of the ACT. No heritage? We've got oodles of it. Well, before there was the busy Canberra that we all know today, there was properties just like this one called Elm Grove on the northern side of the ACT. And then before that, there was the vast natural environment of mountains and limestone plains. Elm Grove is not only historical, but alive and well, and remains one of the few working sheep properties within the ACT, doing what it's done for some 150 years. G'day, Paul.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for coming out to Elm Grove.
Oh, I know. It's beautiful.
The property owes its start to the Gillespie family. The Gillespies, as you probably know, they settled at Horse Park, which is just next door to us, in the mid-1850s. That was settled by John and Mary Gillespie. James settled, that's who's their son, James settled here in the 1860s. He built the homestead, which is over there, and the buildings around it in the 1880s. And he stayed here, or the Gillespie family stayed on this property right through up until the mid-1980s. So for over 100 years, the Gillespie family farmed this property here. My wife and I, we bought the rural lease from Jimmy Gillespie in 1987. And now my son and his wife, they live here.
So there've only effectively been two names on this lease in 100 and...
Well, that's right. It's 100 and whatever years it is from the 1860s right through till now. In June this year, which was very good, the property was put onto the ACT Heritage Register.
You would not know that just over the hill down there, basically the beginning of Canberra, the suburbs of Gungahlin, and then heading further south. This is truly an oasis, isn't it?
It is, Richard. It really is. I mean, it's literally only a kilometre that way, the suburbs, and unfortunately, in some ways, the suburbs are coming closer. But you're right, it is an oasis, and just the setting, as you can see, we're in this valley sort of thing, surrounded by hills. It's a beautifully protected place. It's, as I said, it's so close to New South Wales. Literally over the top of that hill is New South Wales, and yet down there is the other suburbs of Gungahlin. The other thing about the property is that it is still being used and still able to be used for what it was used for when the Gillespies got here. Now, the Gillespies, when they were here, they farmed it for wheat, oats, barley and sheep. And actually they built that wool shed over there back in the early 1950s. And since we've been here, we've continued to do exactly the same thing. Not so much the wheat and the barley, but certainly the oats and the fine wool. And I know from speaking to Lyle Gillespie, who was a very well-known Canberran, and also a very well-known historian, he was very impressed to hear that the property was still being used today for how it had been from when the Gillespies got here.
Once apparently Elm Grove had a very significant visitor.
That's right, yes. Again, Lyle mentioned to me that before he died that Queen Nellie Hamilton, who was a member of the Ngunnawal tribe, she came out to Elm Grove and met with James Gillespie before she died. Now, as I understand it, she died in about the 1890s, so it was sometime leading up between 1880s and 1890s that she was out here meeting with James.
Why is it important to conserve a property like this?
Oh, because whilst agriculture is not a major activity of the ACT, it nevertheless was a major part of the early development of the ACT. It has always been a major use of large areas of the ACT. This property here, because of one, the history from the Gillespies, but two, the fact that it's been able to be used continuously and farmed as a pastoral property for all of those years. And there's not too many properties in the ACT like that. I mean, one that comes to mind is Lanyon, and one of the consultants who was working on this property said, Paul, this is a bit like a Lanyon. It's not Lanyon at that end of the spectrum, it's Lanyon at another end of the spectrum. Elm Grove has got so much to offer. Over the years, well, we've been here over 20 years, well, I think probably over the last 15 years, I mean, one of the local scout groups has come out here numerous times, and they're walking through the hills and the camping, etc. A couple of school groups come out here. We've had them out here when we're shearing, because just to be able to show the children, it's so close, you're literally only 20 minutes from the nearest school, not even that, 10 minutes, to be able to show them that activity, but not in a museum setting, in its real, normal, natural setting. As I said, there's so much history in this property, it's just not funny, and yeah, that history should be shared with the people of Canberra. So if you come and have a look. This is another one of our projects.
So here I'm at the top of Oak Hill, which is on the property Elm Grove, and it's literally on the border of, you've got New South Wales on this side and ACT on that side. And many people believe that this is the first view that the European explorers had of the limestone plains. A party led by Charles Throsby Smith is believed to have reached here in late 1820 in search of the elusive Murrumbidgee River, spoken about by the Aboriginal people. The trip was funded by Throsby Smith's well-known uncle, Charles Throsby, a naval surgeon turned explorer. The party failed to locate the river, and a frustrated Charles Jr. returned to Uncle's house in the Southern Highlands with the bad news. Needless to say, Uncle Charles wasn't happy about the result either, and the pair ended up having a huge argument. The following year, Charles Sr. set out and found the Murrumbidgee himself, reaching Point Hut Crossing near Tuggeranong. Mental note, never work with family.